I just want to announce to everyone again, welcome to Strategies for Implementing Accommodations. In the chat box, you have a link to the presentation. You can go ahead and copy that and access all the slides. I just want to notify you that the presentation tonight will be recorded. So again, we are delighted to have you for MSCA's Digital Learning Series. Next slide. My name is Geraldine Duval. I'm an organizational specialist at MSCA. My two primary roles are really great. I enjoy what I do. My first role is to support and develop statewide professional development program opportunities for educators and ESPs across the state. By doing this, we're able to refine our skills and learn as a community, and that's always a great thing. The second function of my role is to monitor and review educational policies and regulations. By doing that, I'm able to see what are the needs that you have that will better enable you to support your students and also work with your practice to make it better. So these are very essential components, and I'm delighted to be a support for you in the state. If you need to contact me, my email will be on the slide, and also you'll have access to that slide deck that we mentioned that you can get access to on the chat box. Next slide. As I mentioned when we got started, you are in for a treat with Kimmy and Evelyn. We have partnered with NEA, and they are working from Michigan Educational Association and partnering with them as well, because we wanted to make sure that we provided supports for you to prepare you to support your students. And that is part of NEA's mission, to fulfill the promise of public education to prepare every student to succeed in a diverse and interdependent world. How relevant is that to our topic for today in terms of accommodating for all diverse learners? So we're delighted for the partnership with NEA to address your needs. And we want you to realize this is also a member benefit for you. MSCA prides in supporting you in your professional practice. And this is your dues money coming right back at you. So one of the things that MSCA has done is in their mission is to ensure that we elevate your practice to support all students. And we've done that in three capacities, in terms of building strong locals, in terms of leading the profession, and a culture of organizing. This is more in the realm of culture of leading the profession. So again, we will be here for you, and we hope that you are active in the chat box if you have questions, because this workshop is for you. Again, thank you for joining for our session, and I'm going to leave you with great hands with Kimmy and Evelyn.
So in this one, we're going to be talking about providing accommodations and scaffolds. So whether you have students with IEPs, language learners, older students with developing literacy skills, you have students who are distance learning, this is a presentation for you to help you find ways to support those students. We're going to begin our webinar with a survey, so that way we can tailor fit the rest of this webinar for your needs.
My name is Evelyn Doherty. I'm so excited to be with you here today. I am currently an EL teacher at the middle school level, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. However, in the past, I've also taught in a general education classroom in 5th grade, and I've also worked with language learners in high school, as well as language learners in continuing education beyond high school. I am very excited to share with you some of the strategies that teachers have developed in Michigan over the past couple of months that have really enabled us to support a wide variety of learners online.
My name is Kimmy Conrad. This last year, I was a 5th grade teacher in Kalkaska, Michigan, so in northern Michigan in a rural district. I actually just moved to Maryland. I just moved to Baltimore, so I'm so excited about this webinar and getting a chance to connect with some teachers here. Previously, I've taught 2nd and 3rd grade, as well as robotics. So before we get started and jump into our survey, I want to talk just a little bit about what we mean when we say supports. So another term you might have heard is accommodations. This whole webinar is going to be talking about different accommodations that you can provide for students. A quick note, but an important note. When we talk about accommodations and support, we're not talking about modifications. So accommodations are things that change how your students are accessing information. They're not changing the content of instruction, the expectations for learning, and they're not reducing the requirement of the task. If those things are being changed, then it's a modification. So modifications will change what a student's learning. And the only time you're going to be making modifications is if that student has that requirement in their IEP. So today we're talking about accommodations, not modifications. Now, there are a lot of different names that you might have heard before, along with accommodations. This could be scaffolds, which is a more generalized term for different accommodations. SIOP strategies, these are sheltered instruction observation protocol. These are things that you would use for English language learners, another type of support, or elements of explicit instruction. No matter the name, all of these are different types of supports. I'm going to give you a moment to look over a list of different kinds of common supports that you might see listed in an IEP, in a 504 plan, or just things that you do in your classroom naturally. These are all different ways that you can support your students with supports. I'm going to turn it over to Evelyn now to talk about meeting the needs of our group.
So we want to make sure as we are, oh, Kimmy, I think I might need you to unpresent so I can share.
Oh, sorry. I thought it would automatically switch it over for you.
So we really want to make sure that the next 50 minutes of our time together is spent meeting your needs and talking about strategies that will be most supportive for you. So we're going to start with a brief Google survey, and that Google survey will allow us to tailor the rest of this presentation to meet your needs. One thing that you might choose to use our time together to learn more about is how to use Google Docs to provide supports for all learners. You might be familiar with Google Docs as a word processing system, but over the past couple months, a lot of teachers have discovered amazing kind of tricks and hacks that have allowed us to use Google Docs to embed visuals, to embed videos, to include all types of supports like read alouds and word banks that could be supportive for all types of students. So you might choose in our survey to focus on Google Docs this evening as a tool to support students. Another tool you might choose to focus on today is Google Quizzes. Again, most people are familiar with Google Quizzes as a powerful tool for formative assessments or for getting a quick check for understanding, but it's also possible to do some hacks in Google Quiz to use it to deliver an entire lesson. You can embed videos and you can embed all kinds of other supports in Google Quizzes. Another tool you might choose to learn about this evening is Flipgrid. Flipgrid is an amazing tool that allows students to upload videos of responses in a group discussion and to have a group discussion in an asynchronous learning environment where they're not all on the computer at the same time, but still hearing and responding from each other. Flipgrid is a really powerful tool if you're not using Seesaw. In Seesaw, this is embedded within the program, but if you're using Google or the Google Suite, we really highly recommend Flipgrid as one option you might want to explore. The next tool that we could spend our time this evening discussing is Edpuzzle. Edpuzzle allows you to take videos, either videos from YouTube or videos that you've created yourself of instruction, and insert formative checks for understanding. You might have very simple yes or no questions. Edpuzzle is also a tool you can use to recreate the guided release, I do, we do, you do, in an asynchronous online setting. You can use it for graphs and data analysis or even short answer responses to provide that guided release. And the final tool that you could choose to spend our time this evening exploring is screencasting, which is allows you to either record the screen on your computer, your desktop, or allows you to record yourself, or both, as you recreate a lesson and include all types of supports. So as you are thinking, think about which tools would be most helpful for you to learn about this evening. We'll probably have time for 2 tools. So right now in your chat box, you'll see a Google form survey, or if for some reason your chat box isn't working, you can go to tinyurl.com/Maryland supports. So we will give you 3 minutes to fill out that Google form survey, and based on your results, we will tailor the rest of this discussion to focus on the strategies that you would like to learn about, as well as the ed tech tools. And again, that link should be in your chat.
Looking at the one that says docs.google.com. If you have any difficulty accessing, just let us know in that chat box as well. I see someone saying no survey. Let me click it and see. The link is working on my end. Can you be a little bit more specific? Let me go back to Zoom. We're just about halfway through our time. As we pull up the results, feel free to continue finishing during that time too, because it'll take us a moment to pull it up. Just about 1 more minute remaining. While this time always feels long while we're waiting, it's very exciting to see which are the tools that the participants are most interested in. I love this part. All right, Evelyn is going to pull up those survey results so we can take a look and see what people are most interested in learning more about.
Okay. All right, so it looks like we've got 7 responses. So it looks like most of you are using Google Classroom as your learning management system, with some of you using Schoology and Blackboard. It looks like most of you are working with students who have IEPs. A lot of you are working with language learners and students with 504s, and some of you are supporting older learners with developing literacy skills.
such a range of different groups that
Wow,
you're
almost,
supporting.
yeah, almost 3/4 of you are doing a blend between synchronous and asynchronous learning. Some of you are only doing asynchronous, and some are only doing synchronous. And again, today we'll really be focusing in on the strategies you can use for asynchronous learning when you are providing work for students to do on their own time. And now the most exciting part, what tools do we want to learn about this evening? It looks like Google Quizzes is pretty high up there with 5, as well as Google Docs and Flipgrid. So I think what we'll do is for today, we will focus on Google Quizzes and Flipgrid. And then when we come back for the next 2 Wednesdays, when we talk about Google Classroom, we can hit on Google Docs and provide that for you as well. Some more support then. Okay, it looks like the strategies that you would like for us to focus in on this evening are reading aloud texts and assignments, guided practice, language supports, visuals, frequent checks for understanding, concise directions, and reviewing prior skills and knowledge. So we will make sure to very clearly focus on those during our presentation.
Google Quiz and Flipgrid are such natural matches for those supports as well. So those are just going to blend together very well.
Yes. So I'm going to turn it over to Kimmy, who is going to talk with you more about Google Quizzes.
All right, I'm pulling that up on my side. Oop, I have to share from there. Give me just a moment.
As she's doing that in the chat box, if you could just give us a sense of your previous experience with Google Quizzes. So you could either write in the chat box, I'm new to Google Quizzes, I have a little bit of experience with Google Quizzes, or I've used Google Quizzes quite a bit.
Ooh, actually, Evelyn, can you share from your screen? Because it's saying that I'll need permission for it. As Evelyn is doing that, Google Quiz, I'm just going to talk a little bit about what it is. So Google Quiz, there we go. Google Quiz is part of the whole Google Classroom and Google Suite that you can use. If you've used Google Docs before, it's pretty similar to that. The difference is that you can use Google Quiz, much like Google Forms, to do surveys and for grading. You can include an analytics piece, so that way your students are getting reports from that and you're getting reports as they're answering questions. The format, I would say, isn't necessarily the most user-friendly for students, but you can include a lot of supports in Google Quiz to make it more user-friendly for students. You just have to do a couple of workarounds to make it a little bit easier. So if you take a look right here at what Evelyn's projecting, you'll see what a Google Quiz looks like. Now, it wouldn't necessarily have the videos put into it, but this is something that you can add in, and I highly, highly recommend this. By adding in videos, whether videos that you've created or videos that you found online, you can better help support instruction, and you can use this as a spot to explain the quiz and use it as more of a lesson. Evelyn and I have both found that we really like to tie in screencastifys that we've made, so that way we can talk through the questions that students are going to be looking through and use it as more of a lesson format. So in an asynchronous learning environment, it can be really nice to talk through the material at the top, and then in the following questions, use that as a space to check for understanding. As Evelyn's scrolling through, notice as well that she's incorporated visuals that tie directly into the content. And she's included some different language supports as well. So this language support would be one that you could make in Google Drawing, or you could also make it in Google Docs, and you'd take a picture so that way you can attach it here. This is going to be helpful for students who are still developing language skills. because they're going to be able to fill in those blanks but still use a complete sentence. You might have heard this referred to before as sentence starters or paragraph frames. And again, including this is going to help you get responses from students that better match that learning target for them. Evelyn, do you have anything to add? I see you're typing on the Google quiz.
Yeah. So again, this has been a really powerful tool that some teachers are using to deliver their entire lesson. And you've already seen Kimmy talk through a lot of the supports. I'll show you right now how to create some of those supports.
I'm seeing, yeah, Kimberly Hamrick is saying that she's brand new to Google Quizzes.
Perfect. So if you if you go to Google Quiz, and then you can click Create and Grade Quizzes with Google Docs, with Google Forms, and we'll go to Google Forms.
Oh, several people are adding in saying they're new. Cassandra is, Dolly is.
Perfect.
Sandy J. Yeah,
Awesome.
so let's take a moment. So there are a couple different kinds of things that you can do with Google Forms. Quiz is just one of them. So if you look at that top row where Evelyn has her cursor, you'll see that you don't have to use the quiz format. You can choose something else too. So if you've ever received a survey or a form in Google, like the one you just filled out for us, all of these would be the same kind of format. You don't necessarily have to use the quiz format. That's just one choice. So you can see on here what I mean when I say it doesn't necessarily start off as a very user-friendly tool, but you can build in all those different supports that Evelyn just showed you in the example to make it something that's going to help support students.
So Kimberly was asking about the steps again. No problem. So you'll go to docs.google.com/forms. And then you'll create a quiz. When you create a quiz that allows you to provide feedback to your students based on their responses. Once you're in your blank quiz, there's a few options. So the first thing you can do is you can create a multiple choice question, or you could choose short answer, or you could choose paragraph if you'd like students to type more. There's multiple choice, checkboxes, drop down, which is a little bit confusing in my opinion. I think multiple choice or checkboxes would be your best bet. There's also, you could do things like a linear scale from 1 to 5, or a multiple choice grid. But again, those are multiple choice grid and checkbox grid can be a little bit confusing. So you'll probably find yourself focusing most on short answer, paragraph, multiple choice, or checkboxes, and maybe a linear scale.
A quick note about short answer too. With my students, I tend to pick paragraph even if I only am looking for a short answer. So yeah, Evelyn, keep it on short answer. You can see that it only shows a short amount of space right there. So if a student types in a sentence that's longer than that, they're not going to be able to see the beginning of their sentence. So for my lower elementary students, or even like my 5th grade students last year, I found it was difficult to ask them to go back and revise their sentence to make sure it was a complete sentence if I picked short answer. So almost no matter what I was having them type, I picked paragraph just so they'd be able to see what they already typed.
The first really powerful modification that you can do with Google Forms is you can add a video. And this works very well with chunking. So you can choose a small video, like 2 to 3 minutes. Again, it could be a video that you create yourself using screencasting, or if you find a video on YouTube that relays the information that you'd like for students. So you click Add Video, and you can either add a YouTube video or you can link to your own video. And in Google Quizzes, if you want to include your own video, you do need to first upload it to YouTube. So again, that step was I'm over here, I click on the video add video, and you paste the URL from your YouTube video here. So let's practice that. I'll go to youtube.com, and maybe I will do how to calculate percentage. So if this was a video that I thought was powerful, I might go here, copy and paste the URL. And then when I go to my blank quiz, I can select it, and you'll see it's embedded right within the form. I highly recommend clicking on the video and making it larger, the largest you can, and then saying something like, watch this video first. You can drag the video to put it up higher on your quiz, so it's the first thing, and then you can ask questions. So again, you can start with a short chunked video, and then you can add questions after it to check understanding. Another powerful tool is with this button right next to the question. So what is the number on the top of a fraction? So if I wanted to add a visual support for this question, I could click on this little image icon right next to my question, and I could upload an image. I could also go to Google image searches. So I could do fraction, numerator, and denominator. I could put this image if I want to support students with answering that question. And now that image will show up for them to help them and support them as they're answering the question. So some of you were asking about how to embed visuals. This is how you can do it on Google Forms. If you ever want to see what it looks like from the student end, you can go to the top and press this little eye icon, which is preview. And now this gives you the student view. So you can see that the student view now has the video that they can watch, and then a question after it, underneath.
In Google Quizzes, it also helps you chunk out information. If you wanted students to, like, for sure watch the video first before they were able to go on to the next section, you can do that right in here. So you'll see Evelyn has her cursor. It looks like an equal sign. This is to add a section. So Evelyn, can you go ahead and click on that? So if you scroll down, you'll see that now there's a new section on here. When students are completing this, you can choose to have this be on a new page for students. This is an awesome tool for your students who might have difficulty with attention, or who have in their IEP or 504 that they need to have assignments shortened or chunked out, because you can help create that space between the sections that they're filling out. In addition, you can also add a progress bar. So students who are working through these different sections, they can see how far along they are in each of the sections. So that way it doesn't feel as overwhelming to them. There's an end in sight, so to speak.
And to add the progress bar, you would go to Settings, Presentation, Show Progress Bar. So again,
almost anything that I do with students now, I show a progress bar. Even for myself, when I'm filling out a survey, it gives me a lot of reassurance to know how close I am to the end. Otherwise, it's difficult to know how many more pages you're going to be clicking on.
Another tool that several of you mentioned that you were interested for how to learn how to include is language supports. So by language supports, we might mean word banks, we might mean sentence starters or sentence frames. So for this question, for example, if I wanted to do a short answer, I could type a sentence frame here. So what is the percentage for 2/10? Explain your thinking. Underneath, I could write, I know that the numerator is blank, period. And the denominator is blank, period, etc. And you could write a sentence frame here for them that they could use to support them as they answer their question.
And
Now,
go ahead.
this is a little bit more of an advanced trick, but you'll notice that when I go to view this and see what it looks like, that it's a little bit hard to differentiate the support of the language of the sentence stem from the question. So one trick that I see some teachers use, again, it's more of an advanced trick, is that you might go into a Google slideshow, and here you would create your sentence stems here. So I know that the numerator is blank, and the denominator is blank, and then you would complete your sentence frame or your paragraph frame, and then you can go to Command-Shift-4 to take a screenshot of that if you're on a Mac, or I believe it's Option-Shift-4 on a Chromebook. So you can take a screenshot, and then when I'm in my Google quiz, instead of having the sentence stem be here, I can go and I can add an image. I'll upload it from my desktop. I'll browse, and we'll find that screenshot that we just took. Here's our screenshot. We'll open it. And now that language support will be a lot easier to differentiate from the question. Again, you could also add visuals into that. But this is a way to add those language supports into the Google quiz, but to have a little bit more control over formatting. Because one of the disadvantages of Google quizzes is that it doesn't allow you to bold or change colors of words. Absolutely, Kimberly. So you can take a screenshot and then add the screenshot as an image. Will they be able to type in the screenshot? No. So what it will look like for their end is it will look like this, and then they would type underneath. So it would be a support for them that would allow them to help them to practice that academic language.
What you could do though, if you were concerned that they wouldn't know how to use that language support, you could make a video of yourself. So do a screencast of yourself to demonstrate that process. And we can show that in just a little bit, how to do that screencast. That's something I would highly recommend anytime you're using a new language supports tool, because otherwise that language support can seem more like a hindrance to students rather than the support it's intended to be. So I'd always demonstrate that first, so that way they know how to use that tool.
I know we went through that quickly, and we will stay on afterwards to provide some more support with the Q&A. So if you have more specific questions, we're happy to help. The last thing that you'll probably need to know is how to, once you've created your quiz, how to share it with students. So you can go to the send button, and you can send it via email. You can email it. You can also get a link for it, and I recommend shortening the URL. And you could post that in your Google Classroom or in your Schoology or Blackboard as a link. I know that Schoology unfortunately does not allow you to directly embed Google Forms, but you can easily share the link with students.
Because
When
somebody
you,
was asking again how we can do a screenshot. So on a Mac, it's going to be Command Shift 4. What did you say it was, Evelyn, on a Chromebook?
I believe it's Option Shift 4.
And something too, the 4 that we're adding in, that step allows you to take a screenshot in just a small area of your screen rather than your whole screen. It's okay if you do a screenshot in your whole screen though too, because you can look at that image later on. You can pull it up. Yep, exactly. And you can snip it later on. I just like using the Command Shift 4 because I can capture it just the section that I want, and I can skip that snipping section in the future. But you can definitely go about it that way as well. It just adds that extra step in there for you. Kimberly's asking, can we type in a Word doc and use the snipping tool there? Definitely. I do that pretty frequently. Well, I'll type in a Word doc, put my picture in, and then use that same snipping tool. Like, I think doing screenshots is going to become your very best friend for adding in these visual supports.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. One more thing that we forgot to mention is if you create a multiple choice question. So again, I'm going to add a question and I'm going to choose multiple choice. What is the number on the top? And multiple choice. And I could say numerator, denominator. I can go to this button that says answer key. And when I'm in answer key, I can choose a correct answer. So I clicked on numerator. If I click on the wrong one, I just unclick again. And then when students are done with their quiz, they can go back in and see what they got right and wrong. So you're providing that immediate feedback to them. Again, it's not as robust as what you could do with face-to-face instruction, but it's one way to provide that immediate feedback to students in an asynchronous learning environment. It's also very powerful for you because you can go to the responses tab, and once students have responded, you can look through and see what students were able to answer independently and what they needed more support with.
Just a note too about adding in correct answers. You can do that with short answers and the paragraph answers as well. It's just that it's very specific with Google quizzes. So they have to type the exact response verbatim in order to get it. So if you have a student who uses a capital letter in an incorrect location, or a student who misspells a word, it's going to mark it incorrect. So you can still do that, but just a note that it's going to need them to be exactly precise. Something else that I like to do with the answers is there's the option to validate the students' responses for short and paragraph answers. If you can go back to that one, Evelyn. So click on, yep, right there. So if you go into the answer key, you can say actually click on done. And I think maybe it's the 3 dots next to it. Click on that one. Yep, and click on response validation. So I have students who, I require all of the answers, and they'll just type in something gibberish or they'll type in something very short. And so what I've started to do is I've used this minimum character count, so that way I can require them to type a certain number of characters for their response before they can move on. So that can be a nice way to ensure that they're typing something with a little bit more information in it.
Kimberly had a great question about what does it look like when you want to see the responses. So let's actually go back to that math lesson. And, oh, this was a copy. But if I go to yours, I made a copy of this, but you can see that the graphs will look like this, Kimberly, or a pie chart. I think if it's multiple choice, it will automatically show you a pie chart. If it is like tools, a select
This is a
all.
checklist. Mm-hmm.
And then you can also choose to view responses as a summary at the question level. So I could go to one question and see how everyone answered that question. Or I can go at the individual level if I want to see one person and see their answers to all of the questions.
And inside that individual tab, that's where you're going to be able to give feedback to your students. So when I'm scoring assignments for students, I've been using that individual tab. You can add responses under every question if you want to. You can send the results back to them. You can also give more generalized feedback. So I like to keep a Google Doc with my kind of generalized answers that I anticipate for my students who I'm pretty sure are going to get it, or the ones that I think that something that they might struggle with. And so that way I can copy and paste those answers straight into that to provide instant feedback for them.
So I'm looking at the time, 15 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we also show you Flipgrid. I think the best way for us to get started with Flipgrid is, in a moment, I'm going to share this with you so that you can look at what an example Flipgrid looks like. So we do have several Flipgrids that we've used with students, but because of student privacy, we aren't able to share those with you because you do see students' faces. But we have created a Flipgrid that we've used with teachers so that you can kind of see what a Flipgrid looks like. So this is what it looks like on a student end. They go to Flipgrid, they see the title, and then here they see a question. And in a moment, you'll see if you click on the question. Welcome to Flipgrid. There's a video of me explaining the directions. And then here are the questions that I'm asking them to answer. Then down here, you can see teachers have responded. So you can respond. So one accommodation that you've learned, you can respond to the prompt. And again, this discussion could be about anything. The one we're choosing to model for you talking about the topic of this webinar, but you could have students be talking, be doing a debate, or you could have students be discussing their reactions to a chapter. They press this plus button, and then they'll log in with Google.
This is something that makes it a really nice tie-in if your school is using Google Classroom, because these are going to be linked together.
And it does embed directly within Schoology as well. I'm not sure about Blackboard, but I would be surprised if it didn't. So this will actually embed directly into Schoology assignments. And then as you can see, then students get this and they can record their answer here. 3, 2, 1. They can talk about their response to the chapter or their new thoughts. They can pause here, which is a really powerful accommodation. So students could say a few sentences, pause, regroup, maybe practice what they're going to say next, and then start again here. When they're done, they'll go to the next button. 1. They can take a selfie. If you have really shy students, they can put an emoji sticker on top of their face if they're really stressed about that, or that's something that you might want to make some clear guidelines around, because students do figure that out. They take their selfie. Next. And it uploads.
This is such a strong tool as well for your students who might struggle to answer an assignment using a written response and who have more strength with verbal responses. So if you had a student who, say, was submitting a Google Doc to you and they were having some trouble in an asynchronous environment expressing themselves fully, Flipgrid could be a really fun way for them to still be able to share all of their thinking and do so in this verbal setting.
And as you can see, they can also, so here we've got someone who responded, and this little picture next to it means that someone did a response to him. So that's really cool because not only can you see his response, but now there's a direct response to him. So again, that's kind of mimicking that classroom discussion. Now, probably the most important support to include in this would be to include sentence stems or include very clear modeling for students. I want to give you a minute just to play around with it. So I am going to share this with you right now in your chat box. And let's take about 3 minutes. Again, you don't have to type or do a full response, but just for you to get a sense of what this tool feels like.
I'm setting a 3-minute timer on my phone right now. All right.
And of course, if you get stuck, we're here to answer questions.
I was just thinking, Evelyn, as you were showing that discussion piece, what a cool tool this could be to still continue guided reading in an asynchronous environment, because you could ask the students and the students would have a chance to talk with each other in a more natural setting instead of just doing it on a chat box or something like that. About 2 more minutes. We're about halfway through that practice time. One more minute.
Okay, so if you can hear us, if you can come down.
Oh no, you did?
Oh, I'm sorry about that, Kimberly.
Oh, glad you got it.
Again, this is a tool that has worked really well with students who are working from Chromebooks as well. I know if you're on a Chromebook, it doesn't require any downloads or any updates. This tool also was one of the few ways that students who were struggling with engagement online, feeling a little bit isolated, we did notice that when we had lessons that ended with asking students to respond to each other in this Flipgrid, we were getting about 30% engagement on an assignment that didn't include this video component. And when we did include the video component, the engagement went up to 70%. So maybe they were texting with each other with their friends. I think it felt very social for them and a good way to connect with their peers. Can these tools be incorporated with Office 365 and Clever? Yes, these tools can be incorporated with Clever. Students can log into Google or to Flipgrid with Clever. With Office 365,
I will check right now. Let me look.
Michelle, we're going to look up that answer for you and we will have it at the end. So again, Flipgrid is a great tool for including collaboration. It's also an amazing way to help students develop their oral language skills and to support students for participating. Students who might struggle more with written responses, it allows them to participate and to process information orally. Laura is saying was a game changer in her world language classes. Students spoke in their target language and great for ELLs. Yes.
It looks like, yes, you can use Flipgrid in Office 365. I'm going to share a link with you. This is a video about incorporating it into Office Teams on Office 365.
So we do want to be respectful of your time. We know that we're coming on the end of our time together. However, Kimmy and I are going to stay on to answer any questions that you might have. In this slide deck, please feel free to go through these other example lessons. On slide 30, you'll notice a doc that says supporting with Flipgrid. There's also screencasting and Edpuzzle, but since we focused on Flipgrid today, that might be helpful for you. If you click on it, on the first page, you'll see a table of contents. It is hyperlinked for you. So if you really want to think about how to use Flipgrid to provide visuals, you would click here. And then you can click on provide visuals and it will take you right down to that section of the document. And it will tell you how to do that and some pro tips as well as the example that we went over together. So
I'm going to grab the link for our presentation again, so that way I can share that with you. Give me just a moment. The slides were in the chat, but I'll repost that link so you have it and you don't have to scroll all the way up to the top.
And before we go into our Q&A, Geraldine, would you have any announcements? Oh, Geraldine, I think you might be muted.
Yes, I am still muted. Thank you again, Kimmy and Evelyn. As I said to everyone, this was going to be a very great webinar. You would get a lot of hands-on, and hopefully you picked up some tools to add to your toolkit. So very important for us is if you can take the time to complete the exit ticket. I believe it was posted on the chat. I saw them do that.
I will post it right now.
Okay. So again, we use that so that we can have a better idea of what you need and how the session went. So please take the time to complete that exit ticket. If you had joined us previously in the past, this is the same exit ticket. And so if you attended a live session, we ask you to complete that feedback from a previous session as well after you complete this one. The next link, if I can have...
let me re-get it as a link.
Click that. It populates.
The next link coming in your chat box right now.
All right, I re-got that one.
And here is the exit survey, which is in Google Forms.
Oh, Geraldine, sounds like you're muted again.
If you can go to the registration browser again and click that. You will see all our sessions and registration. And if you scroll all the way down, besides the upcoming sessions, you will see the archive webinars, so you can access that information and all the video links to our sessions. Okay, we can return back to the main presentation.
So again, thank you so much for joining us today. We're so excited to get to share with you. We also know that sometimes it's really helpful just to ask some questions one-on-one. So Kimmy and I are gonna stick around, but the webinar is officially over. But again, if you have questions or wanna learn more about Flipgrid or about Google Quizzes, we would be more than happy to help.
We will be back the next 2 Wednesdays at the same time. Next week, Wednesday, we're going to talk more about Seesaw. And then the following Wednesday, we'll talk about Google Classroom. That'll be an awesome time for us to get into the nitty-gritty for Google Docs. I know many of you said that that was a resource you were interested in knowing more about. So Google Classroom will be a nice time for us to talk about Google Docs and Google Quizzes if you have any follow-up questions. So hopefully we'll see you the next 2 Wednesdays.
And there are standalone. So if you're only able to attend the 3rd one and not the 2nd one, still join us. So again, thank you again, Kimmy and Evelyn. They've also posted information for other NEA resources. You'll find links to some other NEA digital series, as well as some micro-credentials as supports for you.
Thank you, everyone.